Anything that you fear living in northern Israel?
Right now, my mindset is on, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily Israel. I think I feel safer here than I do in the States. Going home has shaken me a little bit, and I'm always like, okay, I'm going back. I need to prepare my heart. Um, just because, yeah, the atmosphere is different there than it is here. But again, I would say I think my general fear is worldwide, just of resources and the availability of resources. I've noticed that there is a lot more talk about that, with the economies going the way that they're going, that not just here in the Middle East, we could run out of resources, but worldwide. And so I've been thinking about that a lot and how to prepare myself for that so that I have less fear, less concern. So.
This is Sacred Earth Journey Ground Report. Unfiltered perspectives from the ground. No debate, just reality as it is. Welcome to another Sacred Earth Journey Ground Report. This time we're bringing a human perspective from a conflict zone in the Middle East. Many of you will know this state or country to be Israel. I'm super excited to bring to you a dear friend of mine, Wana, and she will be bringing us that human perspective from the land of Israel. Wana, welcome aboard. Happy to
Thank
have you.
you. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I just want to start real quick. When people outside this region hear its name, Israel, they often think of war, religion, politics. But when you wake up there each morning, what does life actually feel like? What does it look like?
Yeah, I think those things are a part of the environment here. If you go to certain parts of the country, you're going to see that more. Of course, Jerusalem is a very hotly contested place. And so a lot of the things that you're going to hear are going to come from that area. I live in the north of the country, about 2 hours from Lebanon, in an Arab city, and it feels a lot different than that. I think things are catching up to this part of the region, but it's definitely a different feel. People are much more chill, as I would say with my Californian accent. There's not so much of that friction, tension, bombing here, terrorist activity there, those sorts of things. And so, yeah, it's a lot more peaceful. And even people in the region will say, or in the country will say, yeah, to go to the north is so much more relaxed. I enjoy coming up. People will come up for holidays. They'll go to the Galilee Sea. And so, yeah, I mean, yes, but it's a very complex country. And to sum it up in just war and conflict and things like that isn't the most accurate picture.
So on that, like when you wake up every day, you've been there, first of all, how long have you been there?
Oh gosh, I mean, probably I've been here since 2016, the first few years in and out of the country. But as far as long term, since 2019. So yeah, I mean, waking up, even when we were having conflict with Iran back in February, March timeframe, there were some days that we had siren alerts, or alerts, I should say. There's a difference. So alerts is just on your phone that there's a possible missile coming overhead. Siren was like if the missile is about 2 minutes away from your area, but that didn't necessarily mean that it was targeted towards this area. It could have just kind of grazed over. And so, yeah, for the most part, waking up is fairly peaceful. Even a little bit further up north with the conflict that's happening with Hezbollah, they've had still, even with the ceasefire, things going on. And during the ceasefire, we didn't experience anything. No alerts, no sirens, nothing like that. So yeah, waking up is fairly normal. You go out into the street and people are just doing life, going to work, going to school, doing that sort of thing. So yeah, sometimes it feels a little bit more insulated in this place. And it's like, yes, there is conflict happening in another part of the country. I have to remind myself of that. Yeah. So yeah.
Now, there was a time not too long ago when you were experiencing the siren alerts and you were having to spend some time in bomb shelters. Going back to when you first arrived in the country initially, I believe you said it was 2016, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So going all the way back to then and then up to now. So your first experience with having to go into a bomb shelter compared to now, talk a little bit about the emotional state, what it felt like the first time you had to go into the bomb shelter, and then now, like, what does that look like in comparison emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, first I should start with this. Like the city that I live in an old house, so we don't have a bomb shelter, and not every house is going to have one, especially in Arab communities, unless the owner decides to build one into their house. So yeah, I've had very few experiences with bomb shelters, to be honest. I think I can count on one hand how many times I've actually been inside of one. But yeah, I mean, the comparison of when I first arrived to now, it's almost like night and day. Things have changed a lot in the past few years. Definitely conflicts have increased. People have been here a lot longer, and they talk about the Intifada, which is like different kind of armed conflicts in the region, not so much like coming from outside in, but within the country. And so that was a different experience as well. But I think everyone can agree that things have definitely intensified over, I would say, I mean, of course, 2023, October 7th is kind of the day that everything started for this country. But as far as like direct kind of the Gaza area, yeah, it's definitely intensified. So emotionally, yeah, I guess from my perspective, I'm not going to represent everybody. It wasn't so much, oh, I have to go into a safe place now because there's something coming my way. It was more like just not knowing. And I think even now for me, it's the not knowing, like, how long is this going to last? Right now, we're in this weird ceasefire. We don't even know what to call it phase. And it's like,
we don't either, by the way.
Like yeah, exactly. I don't think anybody knows. And so, so that for me is probably the hardest. And just to field the questions from abroad, from, back in the States, it's like, how are you doing? What's going on? And I'm like, I can tell you my perspective, but I can't really tell you the whole picture.
Yeah.
And so I think that is probably the hardest for me emotionally is dealing with that. Yeah, I've just made peace with this is where I live. I've chosen to live here. I knew that there was going to be a cost to living here. And yeah, and I've made peace with that. But I think probably just emotionally the hardest thing is, not knowing how long this is going to last, and then just having your daily rhythm interrupted, especially for that first 40 days. It was just like, okay, and there's another siren. So I got to put my cooking down, make sure the stove is off, and, run through the corridor. And
I mean, that in itself is a surreal kind of thing to think about. When you're in the middle of a crisis, like, people respond to crises in very different ways, but to be in that mindset in the middle of a siren alert, and you are sharp enough and calm enough to think and thinking far enough ahead that I should turn this off so that if we survive this, we don't die from the house burning down. So
yeah, you just kind of, I mean, kind of get emotionally numb, because to kind of stay in that state of high stress just doesn't serve you very well. Yeah, that's kind of how I see it. And I'm sure there would probably be different things that would stress me out to a different degree, that would unravel me or something like that. But I think the other thing is, because I live in an Arab community, what we've been told is they're not aiming at us. And so there's not this immediate, like, it's coming this way. It's more like, oh, something exploded in the sky and now there's pieces that we have to worry about hitting the building or things like that. So I think that's more of the concern. If you're in the middle of the country, like the Jerusalem, Tel Aviv corridor, you're really having to worry about that you could die and things could hit you directly. And so I think that also kind of changes the fear level, at least for me. It's like, I know that they're not aiming here. And so, I still need to be careful, and I'm still going to do my due diligence, but I'm not going to necessarily behave the same way as if I lived in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or even further up north. So, yeah.
So, Wana, you just mentioned that they're not aiming at us. Just for the viewers, can you help people understand who is the they? And then if they're not, when you say they're not aiming at us, and you mentioned previously that means the Arab community. So then who is the they, and who are they actually aiming at or targeting if it's not the Arab community? Just so viewers have a better understanding of what we're discussing here.
Yeah. So I would say maybe that statement is more about Hezbollah. So the best way I can describe the situation here is that blood is thicker than water. And Arabs generally see themselves as Arabs. They might say, Ana Philistine, which is like, I'm a Philistine, kind of the old phrasing, or referring to Palestine. And so again, it's also to varying degrees of what that means to be an Arab in this country. But a lot, and the majority, are going to be sympathetic to Gaza and what happened there, for example, to what's happening in Lebanon with Hezbollah. And so I think there is this kind of feeling of like, Hezbollah is not purposely aiming at us because we're Arabs, and they know that, and they're not going to intentionally hurt their own people in that sense. And that might even refer to Iran, but I definitely know that was more talking about Hezbollah and talking about Hamas when there was danger with Hamas as well. With Iran, I'm not sure. No, I think even then there was kind of that's kind of language as well. Like, they're not purposely aiming at us. So yeah, I think anything to do with this kind of conflict, with October 7th, with what we call the proxies. So the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, these types of groups that are being that are connected with Iran, there isn't a general fear that they're going to aim at an Arab community. So,
and so in that, then again, just let's help the viewer understand. So who are those missiles and drones targeting if they're not targeting the Arab community? It may sound like an ignorant question, but again, many viewers may really just have no idea of what really is going on.
Yeah. So basically Jewish communities, Jewish towns, is where they are purposely aiming to hurt and destroy. Yeah.
Okay. So let's switch gears for a second then. As an African-American woman living among Arab, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, secular, and other communities, what has this place taught you about identity, belonging, and the assumptions that people carry about one another?
Oh gosh, that's a really deep question. Yeah, where do I start? I would say it has been challenging. Um, it has been challenging for me. Most people are going to look at me, and the first assumption is that I come from the African continent. I remember one time going to this event, and one of my Arab friends came up to me, and we were saying hello, and then another one of her friends came up to her, and they were talking in Arabic, and she asked her where I was from in Africa, and I answered her. I was like, I'm an American. um, and so, nothing against coming from the African continent or whatever, but there's going to be connotations with that kind of thinking. And so that has been challenging for me. No one has ever been rude to me living where I live. Thank God. I've never experienced outright racism or anything like that. But I also know that my friends who are kind of like my mother's age, that's just kind of the community I hang out with, is not looking for me to marry their son, you know? So this is the kind of culture of like, I have a cousin, I have a, you know, so-and-so, let's hook you up sort of thing. That has never been my experience. Whereas I had Caucasian American friends come and they got that all the time. And so there's just kind of this underlying thing of like, okay, you know, people are okay with me. But at the same time, there is a level of better than or whatever that's just not spoken about. And so I've made peace with that. Again, no one's ever been rude to me. I've had decent conversations with people, and there's never a problem as far as that goes. It's a very complex country. I mean, even within the country, there's just layers of things. So I was talking to a Jewish friend of mine, and he asked me kind of that question: what is it like to be an African American? And I told him, I was like, amongst Jewish people, I've always felt very welcome, very accepted. Even a couple of guys have asked me out and things like that, which was very flattering, and I enjoyed the attention. And so that's a different dynamic. But then when he talked about Ethiopian Jews, for example, and when I've read a little bit about the Ethiopian Jewish experience, they are kind of lower on the totem pole. And so, I mean, there's Russian Jews, there's Ethiopian Jews, there's people who have just made Aliyah, which means the return, from India now. So when I go to the Jewish community just above us, I've seen, you know, more Asian looking people here. And I'm like, wow, it's a very diverse country. It's a very diverse country. And you see all stripes, all colors, all kinds of people. I think that's why I love it so much, because it's just super diverse. So that's really beautiful.
That is very incredible. I have to ask though, how does that make you feel, even if it's not spoken of, but how does it make you feel as an individual, as a human being, to know that there are people who see you as less than or lower or whatever?
Yeah, it's still something that I'm working through, to be honest. There's a lot of layers, because I'm basically here on ministry purposes. And so there has been a hardship for me of being confident in who I am and what I carry, because I know the underlying mentality towards me. And so I'm working towards recognizing that it's there, but not letting it bother me. I think maybe even a few months ago, I would say it bothered me a lot. I mean, in so many ways, I'm not kind of the stereotypical person that you would think would be here for ministry purposes anyway. I think I break a lot of categories. And so I'm making peace with that, but also understanding that, especially in a culture that is called high culture, which just basically means there's a lot of expectations, there's a lot of kind of unspoken rules that you follow, and you just have to learn how to pick them up. They're not really told to you, but you're going to be talked about behind your back if you don't follow those things. Thankfully, I pulled the Ajnabi card, which just means foreigner in Arabic. And so, she's a foreigner. She doesn't know any better. And they just kind of let things slide. But yeah, it's and coming from California, which is low culture, we're very informal people, not a lot of, formalities, and you do this and you do that and stuff like that. It has been a challenge for me to fit into this culture. And I think the day that I realized that I was starting to be accepted was Christmas a couple of years ago. And I've been a member of this church that I've been going to for years, faithful pretty much consecutively on Sundays. And finally, he came up to me, because my Arabic is not as good as it should be, honestly. And
it's a hard language.
It's a hard language. Yeah, really.
With a million dialects.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's the other thing, is all the dialects. So, but yeah, he came up to me and he was like, "Oh, did you understand what was happening?" Like, he was worried that I, how much I caught of it. Was like a member meeting. And I was just like, they're finally recognizing me as part of this church. Yeah. And it took me like 5 years. That was like 5 years of, yeah. So it's a very slow culture. It's very different to see between Jewish and Arabs. Like, Jewish people are like very like direct. You feel like you're in interrogation as they're trying to get to know you.
You're not wrong about that.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling. You're like, okay, you're being friendly, but then you're in. Like, they just include you as part of their community, and that's it. No more questions. Yeah. Arabs, on the other hand, are very hospitable. They roll out the red carpet for you. They're calling you Habibti, which is dear, right off the bat. But it takes a long time to earn their trust and to break into their communities. And one of the things that my friend always says is, she's like, you could live here 20 years, you could be fluent in Arabic, and they will still call you ajnabi. Like, they'll still call you the foreigner. So it just takes time to break into. And that is something that I've just had to make peace with. Like, okay, I'll eventually get their trust. I'll eventually get there. I just need to take more time. So, yeah.
I love that you brought this up, because, this is, you nailed it 100% on both sides, that within the Jewish community or the Israeli community, very interrogative, and all the things up front, straight away, direct. Whereas with the Arab culture and the Middle Eastern culture, it's absolutely slower. They are very hospitable. The things that are said to you up front may feel good, but they may not always exactly be what they truly mean. It's hard to explain the dynamic, but you are absolutely being watched and tested as far as your intentions and as far as your genuineness and motives, and rightfully so, right? Because they have experienced so much, that they have to be careful for this. One of our guests on the Sacred Earth Journey Roundtable, his name is Midhat Zwayan. He's an Iraqi business leader and cultural intelligence consultant for people doing business in Iraq. And one of the things he said was, trust is slow. And we have a guest legacy collective for merchandise and things like this, shirts and mugs, and his quote made it onto the guest legacy collective, trust is slow, because you nailed it. It's and this is something that is quickly picked up and learned by people who are trying to make it into the community, and it's something that needs to be taken very seriously. And for the work that you're doing, especially, you really have to have this constantly sitting up at the forefront with every single interaction. And you have to operate very strategically and slowly, and understanding that every facial expression, every word that comes out, every nuance, all the things can have such profound effects steps later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. You definitely have to think about those things. I think for me, I want to be mindful. I want to be respectful, but I also know that I'm here for a reason. And the way I see it is that Jesus was he was Middle Eastern, but he did a lot of things that broke the Middle Eastern bubble as well. He said a lot of shocking things. And so I think that the kingdom is like that. It is a beautiful mix of all the cultures, and it takes the best quality of the different cultures. And so I'm still learning what that means, as someone who comes from Southern California, as a woman of color, myself, of kind of my own melting pot of, races and places and things like that. But I'm still working that out with the Lord. Like, what does that look like to be me and be okay with who I am, and yet at the same time honor this culture and honor the people that I'm working with, and just be mindful of who they are and where they're coming from. So
that's beautiful. I love that. So the next question is, if you could sit the world down at one kitchen table and share one truth from what you've witnessed on the ground, what would you want people to understand before they choose sides, post opinions, or speak with certainty?
That's, I haven't really thought about that. I think I would say, about Israel in general, because it's so easy to pick a side and just be like, this is the way it is. And I would say, okay, I got it. I would say, for those people who come and do the 10-day tours, that's fine. I understand it's an expensive country to come to, but you are not going to see Israel in 10 days, staying in hotels, doing that, going to just Jerusalem and maybe the Galilee. You're not going to see the whole country that way. And yes, you may have made friends with the tour guide and all of that, but that still isn't going to show you the real picture. I would say, if you're going to come, you need to visit a lot of different places, a lot of different people. I mean, I just spoke about two cultures here, the Arabs and the Jews. There are Druze as well that live in the north. There's a really cool village that has a really rich history just outside the Galilee. They're called the Circassian people, and they're originally from the Caucasus Mountains of Russia area around there. And their history is fascinating. They're Muslim by religion, but they look very fair. You wouldn't think that they're not Arabs at all. And it's just it's a different place. You step in that village and you're just like, where the heck am I? Who are these people? It's such a different place. And I've spent, like I said, already this many years here, and I'm still just like, what? I could spend my whole life here and still not have the full picture. And so I would say, of course, there are certain news things that I listen to and ones that I prefer over others, for sure. Mm-hmm. You can have your favorite people, of course, but I think just keeping an open mind that it doesn't represent the full picture of this country. And then you've just barely scratched the surface of understanding this place. So
I think those are important points in traveling. And this is one of the pillars of Sacred Earth Journey is travel the world unfiltered, very slow, intentional, on purpose, not staying in the, high-end luxury hotels and, excluded from real life, but intentionally staying and living with the locals and experiencing life with the locals and really gaining an inside perspective of what life and community is like in whatever country you're going to. The tourist industry, yeah, it's great. You get to see really neat things. But when you slow down and you go intentionally, you're absolutely right. You learn such a deeper, genuine perspective that you really won't grasp otherwise. The other point that I am pleased that you made is just talking about considering what are your sources? Where are you getting your information from? And one of the other things that Sacred Earth Journey tries to encourage is listening to all sides of information, listening to multiple sources, especially opposing sources. And where you begin to see information overlapping, this is where we can begin to start to find the truth. And so when you limit yourself to the same sources and to one particular side, you are creating a very dangerous echo chamber that is not in inducive to reality. And so I think that's a very important point that you bring up. And then again, the other thing, just like trust is slow, learning is also slow. You have to spend so much time. I mean, there's so much complex history in that region of the world. And especially for Americans, I mean, our country is it is a baby. And these other countries and other parts of the world, for thousands of years, there is such an intricate history that not even the people who live there fully understand the entire region's history. It's so complex. So, what has living under uncertainty taught you about faith, not religion, but faith in people and tomorrow and humanity itself?
It's hard for me to say about faith in people, because I believe that people have good intentions, but that doesn't always play out well. I believe that there is good and there is evil. And so I won't get too deep into that, but I do believe that. And so in this conflict, I do have a side that I have taken, because of what I understand, what is happening, not just here, but also over there, and the history and all of those sorts of things. And so for me, it really does come back to faith in God. I love people. I'm called to minister to people. I'm called to try to see the best in people. But at the same time, I know that there's darkness even in my own heart, and that people can say certain things, but at the end of the day, what are their actions saying? What is that showing? And you have to pay attention to people's actions, because there is that scripture that says, out of the heart is the overflow. Like, whatever comes out of your heart is going to show up in your actions. So I love people. If the enemy or whatever was bleeding in front of me, I would still absolutely do everything I can to help that person and love that person and be there for them. But really, my faith comes back to what God says. And at the end of the day, the way history is going, and I have a hopeful history, I have hope for the history of the world and the trajectory of the world and where it's going. And that's what keeps me going, honestly. And that's what keeps me loving people, because I think if I were here in just my own strength and my own understanding, it would be very easy to be bitter. I'm not going to go into that either, but it'd be very, very easy to be bitter about so many things. And so that's what keeps me grounded, is that God has good intentions for this world, and he's going to bring that to completion. And the people who want to take him up as the king and let him be the Lord of their lives, like, there is a good end. And for people who don't, there is another end. And so, that's what keeps me going. And that's what keeps me loving. And that's what keeps me in this place. Honestly, I wouldn't be here otherwise. So, yeah.
What is maybe a misconception you had about the people of Israel that once you got there and you started living there was kind of destroyed?
It was actually dual. So I grew up in a church that was like, you pray for the peace of Israel, and it was almost an unquestioned, the Jewish people are God's people and they can do no wrong and that sort of thing. And then I moved to Oregon, and Oregon I love it. I loved where I lived and it was amazing. But it does have a much more liberal, progressive view about things. And then I started learning about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the way that was portrayed was that this is an apartheid state, that the way Arabs are treated is very bad. And it just focused on Palestinians in the West Bank. Never mind that there are Arab Israelis. There are Arabs who live in Israel, who have Israeli citizenship, who can travel and vote vote and do all the things. And nobody talks about them, which is quite unfortunate. And so then I kind of came with that mindset, and that was what brought me here. Was my heart was for reconciliation and between Jew and Arab, and how to bring them together. And then I ended up in the town that I'm in, and it was like, whoa, this is so different. And so I had to start learning, like, oh, like I said, there are Arab Israelis, there are Arab Christians who have been here for thousands of years, and who have been the people who have like kept the faith in this region for so long. There's violence being done against them, and there's a whole, there's just so much to that I could go into that I won't. But yeah, and so it was just like, my mind was blown again, that there's just so much complexity to this little country that's the size of New Jersey. So much diversity, so many different kinds of people, so many different histories. And yeah, and still kind of wading through all of that, because again, history is on the side of the viewer, or the one who's the mighty one. And so kind of wading through the history and what is true and what is not, and those sorts of things has definitely been a learning experience for me. And I'm still on that journey of understanding this particular country, never mind all the other countries around it and the region and all of that. So, yeah.
So, the difference between perspectives, even within the West, even within America, like you pointed out, in one state or one region, they have this view and believe this about Israel. In this place, they believe this about Israel. I know that, like, one of the common perceptions is like you were saying, like, either Israel is on the right side, or the Muslims are on the right side, or the all the different sides. What would you say to someone who chooses the perspective of maximums? In other words, like, all of these people are right, or all of these people are right. Is there any truth in that? Or is it a lot more complex, like we've been talking about? For example, someone here might say the ones who are causing all the problems and all of the disruption is this people group. What would you say to a Westerner who has that mindset?
Yeah. I would say, depending on what side they're saying is the perpetrator or the one causing all the problems, I would say, yes, maybe. But still, even in that, there is a lot of complexity. Yeah, like I mentioned before, there is Iran, and it does have proxies. And unfortunately, it's funding those proxies to do what it is doing all around. But I would say it's complex in the sense of, look what it has done to those communities as well. So not only am I concerned living here just about Israelis, I'm also concerned about the Iranians and what they have to go through. I'm also super sad about Lebanon and what these people have had to go through. It's not so much, I would never say it's the Lebanese themselves that are bad people. Unfortunately, they have allowed this proxy group to take over way more territory than they should have. And they're just doing a lot of harm and damage to their own people. I would say the same about Gaza. Like, I am not against the people of Gaza, but I would say Hamas itself and the ideology that it proposes, it's not good. And so again, it's just like, you can say that there's bad people or there's people causing problems, but it's also who is that affecting? It's not just affecting us here in this country. It's also affecting their own people. And so, yeah, so that what has kept me from like, oh, there's bad people and they're doing bad things. It's like, I am sad about the choices of people and how it has affected their own people as well. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind, is that when we say things are bad or whatever, just realize what are the implications of that, not just for you, but for the people around you and for your community or whatever sphere you're operating in, and being mindful of that. To just paint people as bad, at least for me and my faith, is not, it's not how it works, you know? We're taught to have compassion. We're taught to see the, like, what's behind that as well. And I think just paying attention to what's behind is also really important. So, yeah.
It's also important to recognize that a government is not necessarily representative of the people.
Exactly.
Nor does an individual represent a government, and nor should we expect an individual to answer for the actions of governments and regimes and nation states. I find this oftentimes in politics, where someone will demand that an individual answer for the actions of their government or a state regime that they are not even connected to, simply because they're Jewish or they're Muslim or whatever. And this is something that we really need to stop. No individual should be demanded to answer for these groups and for these governments. And so, because it's not fair, and it's not the true representation.
No,
So,
exactly. I mean, it's kind of the reverse, is like being an American who's lived abroad. And then people are like, what do you think about this president? Because I've, lived abroad with different presidents. And it's just like, and they just come at me like I need to know all the answers about my country. And I'm like, okay, either I need to like go back and do a lot more due diligence, or you're putting a lot of responsibility on me. And
right?
so, yeah, I think, yeah, just kind of putting it back that way. If you were to travel to another country, and because America is the way it is and the way the world sees the United States, I should say, because if you talk to South Americans, they'll say they're also Americans, and that's another thing. But like, if you talk about North Americans, everyone has this focus on us, and they absolutely expect the same. But if you've ever experienced that, like, what do you think of Trump? Just whoa, like, it's a lot. And so just having that mindset that, like you said, that it's the same for other people. They're not going to necessarily represent their government or have the same view or whatever, especially for a big country, even a small country. And so just having that understanding and that grace, I think, is super important. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything that you fear living in northern Israel?
Right now, my mindset is on, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily Israel. I think I feel safer here than I do in the States. Going home has shaken me a little bit, and I'm always like, okay, I'm going back. I need to prepare my heart. Just because, yeah, the atmosphere is different there than it is here. But again, I would say, I think my general fear is worldwide, just of resources and the availability of resources. I've noticed that there is a lot more talk about that, with the economies going the way that they're going, that not just here in the Middle East, we could run out of resources, but worldwide. And so I've been thinking about that a lot, and how to prepare myself for that, so that I have less fear, less concern. So yeah, that would be.
I relate so much to you with regard to you feel less safe in America than you do being where you are right now. And I've said this so many times to people when they've asked me about my visits to Iraq or to Egypt or Turkey or Oman and other places. And I have to say, I share the same sentiment. I feel safer walking alone on the streets in parts of Iraq and Oman than I do walking alone in the streets at night in downtown Springfield, Missouri. And
Mhm.
that's a pretty big deal. The resources, a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, lives in Iran, and their access to resources, to supplies, to food, to Ziploc bags, to
Mm.
household products, to meat. He said that the chicken and beef have gone up 400%. They're
Oh.
having to travel longer distances and more dangerous distances just to get these everyday common supplies. Um, has that changed since this? I call it not war because I get ridiculed by some people. This is not a war. I'm like, okay, well, the people who are living in it probably disagree with
Yeah, I would say something different, but okay.
that. Since the not war started, have you noticed a difference in being able to access just everyday necessities and supplies?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely not as extreme as Iran, as you pointed out. But yeah, the cost of gas has gone up. The cost of food has gone up. Yeah, so that has definitely been something that we're seeing here as well. We are also affected by what's happening around us. Yeah.
Is how are you handling that? Because you mentioned that you're there on ministry.
Mhm.
I can imagine that your your budget is limited. So, and but not even limiting it to just you, the people in the community where you live. I mean, how is everyone dealing with this? Are there people that are actually starting to suffer, or suffering more so now because of these limitations to supplies?
I haven't heard so much about other people and where they're at. So this town is quite wealthy, actually. So I'm sure they're feeling it and talking about, the cost going up as far as food. But I don't think it's been as drastic yet, where it's like, oh, it's affecting people. There are more poor people, but I think that has just been something that has been happening over the years. In general, it's a very expensive country to live in, and so yeah. But I haven't heard so much about it. It's just like feeling it myself. The other thing that I have to point out is that somehow the dollar is falling to the shekel, and so before, the American dollar was like 3.5 and up, 3.5 shekels to the dollar. Now it's under $3. And so that also makes things tighter as well. I think more so for me than others, because I'm still receiving a lot of my support from the States. So, yeah.
You bring up a good point too, because I believe that the value of the dollar has also declined in other parts of the world as well. If I'm not mistaken, in parts of Europe and
Okay.
where the euro, I don't know if it is still now, but at one point, I believe while I was there, the euro was actually stronger than the dollar. And I'm not an economist, so I may be using the wrong language and all the things. Somebody hearing this may say, she didn't know what she's talking about. I kind of don't,
Yeah.
other than I know that it seemed like the euro was stronger than the dollar. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can't really speak to that so much, but yeah, there's definitely changes and fluctuations in currencies and things like that. So that also plays a factor into what's happening. But definitely like noticing the cost of food going up and gas prices and being like, oh, that's different than what it was a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's a real thing.
so as we begin to wrap up, I have maybe one or two more questions. Uh, i- is there, think of a face or family that has just greatly impacted you in your time in northern Israel, a person, a face, or someone who has just really kind of transformed you or changed you in some way? What does that look like? Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say it's this family that lives in the Jewish community. I've been friends with this lady and her family basically since I've gotten here. And I think she represents another side of Jewish life in the sense of she's Latina, she's from Brazil. And so, again, that's another perspective. That's another kind of facet of Jewish life. So she's not Ashkenazi, which refers to like European Jews. And just seeing what her life is like, I think is representative also of the fact that like there have been quite a few people who've made Aliyah, the return. She was married to an Argentinian Jew, so that's how she was able to come in to the country, and they had children and things like that. But like just the cost of living in this place and all of that, even though it's a socialistic government and a lot of things are like subsidized and there's like a very minimal income that you can't really fall beneath. And just seeing her do life in the midst of that has been really impactful for me. Yeah, she's actually blessed me a few times, and I'm just like, I know your life is hard, like, and you're helping me, like that's humbling. Yeah, she has a beautiful heart. I really appreciated her and her kids and getting to know them and just supporting them as well, like emotionally and prayerfully and walking alongside them in their journey, seeing her kids grow up because I've known them since they were small. Yeah, and even just like they are Messianic Jews, which means they believe that Jesus is their Messiah. And so it was really funny because we went over there to celebrate Passover with them. And I was the one, the Gentile, who was bringing in the Haggadah, which is like the order of the Passover, and walking them through that. And they had never done that before. And I was just like, wow. Well, this is strange. You know, like I thought they were going to teach me a thing or two, you know, and I'm the expert. Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was super interesting and it was fun and they really enjoyed themselves, which was really cool to just be able to bring that in. Yeah, so I've really enjoyed them and their family. Like their oldest daughter is in university or finished university. The next son is just about to go into the IDF. So in Israel, everyone has to serve in the military for like a year to about 2 years, over 2 years if you're a male. And so even just like, okay, he's going like in the midst of this, all of this, okay, you know, and it just puts a face to it because there have been a lot of young men that have died. Like most of the people who are dying here are 18 to 20 something years old. And you're just seeing these faces pop up and it's like, and I'm sad, but I don't have personal connection. I only know one other family that I personally know their son. And every time they're like, yeah, he was called to Gaza or he's being called to Lebanon. It's like, oh, Jesus, protect him, you know, please keep him safe. And so now to have another face and just being like, okay, you know, yeah, just that more of that emotional involvement. I'm not just the outsider looking in now. It's like, this is my friend. So yeah, that family has definitely made an imprint on my life.
Two points. Maybe I'll go in reverse order. One, the fact that you brought up the Messianic Jews. Many people actually don't even know that's a thing.
Yeah.
So, okay. If you're watching this and you just heard Wana refer to Messianic Jews and that they believe Jesus is their Messiah, I highly recommend you to research that and look into it. Because there actually are Jews who believe that Jesus is their Messiah. I am not the expert on that, but I do recommend you go look into it because sometimes people are not aware of this. And then I'm going to backtrack and how you were talking about just how your friends you went in thinking that you were going to bless them or minister to them, and they ended up ministering to you. I cannot tell you how many times this has happened to me going into the Muslim communities in the Middle East. And, I was coming in as this American with, organizations that were, coming in to help and provide aid and all these things. And every single time I walked away feeling way more blessed by that community than I felt like I blessed them. So
yeah, it's a real thing. Yeah.
So, okay, as we wrap up, I'm just going to ask you for any last thoughts. I mean, this is your opportunity, sharing, a human perspective from Northern Israel, uh, especially for the Western viewer. Is there anything that you maybe just want to share with them that you want them to maybe better understand or to realize?
Again, I would just say that before you make any assumptions about this place, at least try to visit at least one time. I think just taking your views from Instagram or YouTube or any of those venues, social media platforms, you're not going to even scratch the surface of the complexity of this place. Yeah, I would say do your due diligence, do your research. It absolutely has made me so sad to see anti-Semitism growing in the world and to hear of Jewish communities being attacked and abused because people saw something online and decided to villainize a whole people group. That absolutely makes me so sad. And we are supposed to represent the free world and differing opinions and ideas. That's what our country was founded on. If we're talking about the United States, and even Europe prizes itself on being open-minded. And I think what I have seen has just been like, whoa, this is not the open-minded West that I grew up in, that I know, that I'm familiar with. So I don't want to do a shame on you, but I'm kind of doing a shame on you because it's just not okay. Like it's super sad to me that this is happening. And I understand being sympathetic to certain people groups, for sure, to refugees, of course. Like we need to be considerate of the refugee and where they come from. Again, talking about the history of our country and it being made up of people from all different places escaping persecution or whatever they went through. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and in trying to sympathize with one people group, completely turn on another people group. I think that's unacceptable. And I think that's the other reason why coming to the States, I'm just like, I'm almost nervous now to tell people where I live. I just tell people I live in the Middle East because as soon as Israel comes up, it's like already you can see the wheels in their head turning. And it's like, I have no idea what you're thinking about where I live and what I do. And I don't have the patience to sit down with you unless you're my friend and explain it to you. So yeah, I think do your due diligence, find out what's really going on. And you can have opinions. That's totally fine. I'm not against people having opinions, but to come against people groups and be slandering them or attacking them or harassing them, it's just not okay.
Absolutely unacceptable regardless. So, Wana, what I hear you saying is social media is not a reliable source.
No,
Number two,
no,
take your time, fully assess all sides before taking a side. And maybe as Westerners, maybe let's not even take sides just yet. Let's just sit back and actually get a lot more information. These are the things that I hear you saying, and I think it is full of wisdom. I think at the end, ultimately, again, we are all human. We need to be showing one another respect and honor and grace. And I could not agree with you more about the, just lumping people into one category and then we choose to respond to an individual based on lumping them in a category. And all of these things need to stop. Your perspective coming from Northern Israel it's valued. It is greatly and deeply appreciated. I know that you are paying a very high cost in many ways for choosing to live where you are living. I know that your time is valuable, Sacred Earth Journey, and I personally greatly appreciate you for making the time to share your human perspective from the ground. And we look forward to possibly hearing more from you in the future. We wish you all the best, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, until next time.
Your ground report, from the ground, as it is.